Well, this is where Bertolt Brecht ended up. He died in 1956 at the age of 58, and he had a heart problem, and this is what killed him. Now, Bertolt Brecht was famous for creating something called the epic theatre, and this was an idea he came up with. And the idea of the epic theatre was he wanted to create a theatre which caused people to think, not just to watch and be entertained, but to think about what they saw and to discuss, because he was very bothered by what happened in the First World War. He was fighting in the trenches and he saw the bloodshed and the inhumanity and the misery of war, and he felt that if he could draw people's attentions to the very negative effects of capitalism, as he saw it, he felt that capitalism was responsible for the war and many other wars. He felt that if people looked at maybe Marxism or communism or socialism, that they would see that there was a better way forward, and to try to avoid wars in the future. Now, in order to create this theatre that he called the epic theatre, he came up with a variety of different ideas that one could use in performance, and one of the specific ideas he called the Verfremdungseffekt. Now, some people refer to that as the alienation device, some people refer to it as a distancing effect. Neither of those are very helpful. The best way of defining the Verfremdungseffekt is taking something very normal and usual and then making it unusual in some way, and that thereby causes people to question what they see in front of them. So, for example, if you are at a wedding and from behind you can see the bride and groom, so the bride's all in white and the groom's in a suit, then if that's usual, that's normal, we understand that image. But if a camera comes around to the front and then you see the faces of the faces of the two people being married, and instead of being human beings, they're monkeys, well, then you would start to think, well, hold on a second, this is unusual. What does this actually mean? And so this is what he meant about Verfremdungseffekt, making the usual seem unusual. He used various different other devices, like, for example, montage was one of the devices he used. Now, montage is where you put a series maybe of images together, and then the person reads those images. There was a famous campaign some years ago, an advertising campaign, in which you saw beautiful women with fur coats walking up and down catwalks, and one of them draped the fur coat along the catwalk as she went, and as it went along, this particular image, out of all these images, there was blood coming out of the coat and going all across the stage. So when you looked at the other models more carefully, you saw that in each case there was blood dripping down from the coats and furs that they were wearing. So that montage of different images was clearly there as an advert against cruelty to animals, in particular the fur trade. So that was a montage of images that helped to do that. But you can use montages in a variety of different ways. That's just one basic example. He used things like flashbacks or flash forwards. Again, it was an anti-naturalist form. If you flash forward or flash back, that causes people to think, causes people to talk, causes people to consider the images they're seeing in front of them. Whereas usually in a play, people watch the play and it just goes over their head. They enjoy it and they leave and they don't think about it again. Some other images, he would speak in the third person sometimes. His characters, would speak in the third person. So if I was a soldier talking to somebody, I then might turn around and say, the soldier spoke to the woman and told the woman to leave the area. So the soldier would speak in the third person. Again, this is an idea to make people think about what they see, not just watch what they see and then move on. Other devices that were used, sometimes they would break the fourth wall. This is one of his most famous devices in epic theatre, breaking the fourth wall. And what that means is that a character would be acting with somebody and then turn, face the audience and talk in character directly to the audience, maybe talking about the thoughts of their character, or maybe talking about the scene that had just taken place, so that you could see that. Placards was another technique that he used. So a placard would be held up at certain points. So In a production I did of Romeo and Juliet, I decided to do it using a Brechtian theme, and I used placards. And at one point, where Romeo is dead and Juliet wakes up next to him and she's crying over the body, I put up a placard saying something like "Stop your romantic gaping," or "Stop your sentimental gaping," or "Gawping," something like that. And the idea was that just at that point when people were feeling very emotional about what they were seeing on stage, forgetting to think about the importance of what they were seeing, but just being taken in by the emotion of it, they saw the placard and immediately they started to think, hold on a second, why has a placard been held up saying "Stop your romantic gawping"? Because it then causes them to think exactly about what they see. Now, all these various different devices and their Verfremdungseffekt are what all went together to try to help create this idea, this understanding of epic theatre, Brecht's epic theatre. An additional part of this is that sometimes he basically told you the plot fairly early on, or made the plot very clear very early on, because he didn't want people thinking about the story and getting sucked into the story so much, maybe. What he wanted them to do was to think about what they were seeing. He referred sometimes to the idea of a play should be a little bit like a boxing match. It should be very vital, and it should be backwards and forwards and backwards and forwards, like boxers boxing backwards and forwards with one another. And at the end of many of his productions, when the audience finished, applauding what they'd seen, instead of just then putting their coats on and politely going home, they would often get up on stage and discuss with the actors the meaning of the play that had just been performed. So Brecht's epic theatre is a theatre that tried to cause people to think about the negatives of the world, in particular capitalism, but to think about the negatives in the world and to get them to try to see things from the perspective of the people who have nothing. In the lyrics of one of his songs is something along the lines of, food is the first thing, morals follow on. And now what he means by that is, don't criticize people for stealing, don't criticize people for doing bad things if they are starving. Once they're fully fed, once they get all the food that they wanted and they're happy and comfortable, maybe then we can talk about the morality of the way they live their lives. So he was very keen on saying, let's put, before anything else, let's put this first. Every human being needs to have a full belly and feel comfortable and not starving. Once you've got that, then you can talk about civilization and morality and the things that we put as a society that we value.